Hi, I'm Steve and this is American Midwest English. Before we begin, if you like the video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons below. Okay, today we're going to talk about punctuation. Over the next couple of videos, maybe 2 or 3, we'll talk about punctuation, different types of punctuation in American English and how they're used. So these next few videos will be mostly about writing English and not actually speaking English, but they're still important. So punctuation, it's important to use proper punctuation because the meaning of what you write can change, and it can change a lot. Let's take, for example, this phrase. This is what you know. Depending upon if I put a question mark or a period at the end of it, two different types of punctuation, it will change the meaning of the sentence. So this is what you know, it's a question. Putting a period there makes it a statement. Now you could even change that if you put this called a colon, then this sentence becomes the beginning of a list. So as you can see, the correct punctuation can make a big difference on what the meaning of the sentence is. We'll start with periods. A period is the dot at the end of a sentence. It's used in a few other places too, but for right now we're just talking about at the end of a sentence. It's used at the end of a sentence to make a statement. Again, there's a period. 2 examples. Punctuation is important, and the sentence ends with a period. This sentence is correct, and it ends with a period. Another way that a period is used is for abbreviations. In an abbreviation, one letter is equal to a whole word. So in this case, it's 1 a.m. A.m. is anti-meridian, and that indicates the morning. So in this case, the A gets a period and the M gets a period. Now, if you have an abbreviation requiring a period and it ends the sentence, you don't need another period to show that it's a sentence. So you would not put, you would not put 2 dots there, 2 periods. You don't need that. It would be confusing and it actually changes the sentence a little bit. Okay, so another example is, I live in the U.S. U and S both get a period. Now, the next sentence has a special case to it. He works for NASA. Now, notice that NASA does not have periods after each letter. The reason for this is because NASA is an acronym that is said as a word. So you do not say he works for NASA. It's just said as NASA. There's no rule about which acronyms are said as words and which ones aren't. It's just something you have to learn and you have to memorize it. But when you have one that's said as a word, you do not need periods after each letter. Just if it's at the end of a sentence, the period that marks the end of the sentence. That's it. Another thing is, you will very often find things like AM or US without the dots after both letters. This is common. It's not entirely correct, but it's very common. So if you come across it, just understand that there's probably supposed to be periods in there. And it can be a little confusing because in some cases, if you don't have the periods in a situation like AM, it's difficult to tell if it's the word am or if it's AM. You have to tell from the context of the rest of the sentence. Abbreviations are also used for dates. Each day of the week and each month of the year has its own abbreviation. So in this sentence, it's Tuesday, December 8th. Now, after the abbreviation for Tuesday, there's the period, and then there's a comma to show that this and this are both part of the same sentence. And then you have the period at the end of the sentence. So December has a period to show that it's an abbreviation. Tuesday has a period to show that it's an abbreviation. And the whole sentence has a period to show that it's a complete sentence. English allows you to have single word sentences. So in this case, stop, please. These are both considered sentences, so each one gets its own period. Each word gets its own period. You will also see periods used in numbers. For example, in money, $12.43. American English uses a dot to separate the dollars from the cents. In a decimal number, 3.14. When you're talking about mathematical numbers, you don't say 3.14, you say point. So that's 3.14. Now, something I should have mentioned in the previous segment, you can have dates that are expressed solely with numbers, only with numbers. And in that case, the month, the day, and the year are each separate. They're separated by a decimal point, not numbers. I misspoke. It's not a number. So in this case, 12, 8, 20. Americans use month, day, year. So just so you understand why it looks like that. So it's 12, this is December 8th of 2020. And there's a period separating the month, the day, and the year. Now I'll give you a few examples of how to use periods correctly in a sentence. This is not a complete list. For a complete list of how to use periods and other punctuation correctly in sentences, in the more information box below, I'll give a suggestion for a book to use. The book is going to be mostly for people that do formal writing. So if you do not do a lot of formal writing, the book is not going to be very helpful for you. So you probably won't need it. So anyway, let's get to the sentences. The first sentence, I read I, Robot. I, Robot is the title of a book or a movie, and so it's put in quotes. Now, because this is the end of the sentence, it gets a period, but the period is put inside of the quotes, even though in the title, the actual title of the book or movie, there is no period. But because it's the end of the sentence, it uses a period and the period has to go within the quotes. The next example, he asked, "Can I go?" Notice there is no period, even though this is a statement. Because there's a punctuation mark, in this case a question mark, at the end of the quote, and that the quote is the end of the sentence, you use this for the ending punctuation mark instead of a period. So this is correct. Even though this is a statement, it looks like a question. I read Moby Dick also. Now, because the title is not at the end of the sentence, it's not at the end of the sentence, there's no period in there. And because there's no period within the title normally, you don't have one. So the period goes at the end of the sentence as usual, like normal. This next sentence is a little odd. He wondered who will arrive first. This is a question, but it ends as a period. And there's a grammatical form of this, why it's like this. If you had put quotes in here, for example, if you had said, he wondered who will arrive first. Now it's a question, it's an actual question, and because he's wondering it, because he's asking it of himself, it has a question mark. So it does not use a period at the end, and the question mark goes within the quotes, just like above here. So if this is not a quote of what he's thinking or what he's saying, it's still going to end with a period. I hope that's clear. We'll talk about this type of sentence in another video later on. So just be aware that it exists and that it's possible to write a question that ends with a period. Now, I want to mention something from the previous segment. In the sentence, he wondered who will arrive first, why this uses a period is because this is an indirect question. So I just wanted to clear that up before we move on. And we'll talk about indirect questions in a later video, not in this series for punctuation though. So that's why that sentence uses a period and not a question mark. Other sentences, I'm leaving the US. Now, in this case, it's an abbreviation. There's a period at the end of the S because it's an abbreviation, but that acts as the period for the whole sentence too. So you do not need a second period, because then it starts looking like a different type of grammatical mark, and you don't want that. You don't want to cause confusion. Now we'll talk about how a sentence that ends in an abbreviation is affected by other punctuation marks, like exclamation points or question marks. In this case, are you leaving the US? The periods still stay the same because they're part of the abbreviation, but the sentence is ending in a question mark. So in this case, you will have what looks like two different punctuation marks at the end of the sentence, but that's not really the case because this period is only there because of the abbreviation of S for states. And the same thing goes if this is an exclamation point. The period for the S stays there, and you're adding the exclamation point to add emphasis to the sentence.